Good evening once again, everyone. How you doing? Still all right? Great. Welcome to the last official little extracurricular activity of this weekend's Family Dinner Weekend. We have with us two of the greatest to ever do it, Mr. John Scofield and Mr. Bill Frisell. Who generously donated their time to chat with us for a few minutes. I know John has to wake up at like 3 in the morning to take a flight to go have an 8-hour rehearsal in New York. And I know Bill had trouble getting out of New York today with the storm, so I'm really grateful, as I'm sure we all are. Oh, really? You got an earlier flight? Oh my God. So thank you for being here and for hanging. Yes. Yes, applause for early flights. So this is, a part of this artist to artist series that we do. Sometimes we take two musicians who have never met each other and kind of have them interview each other, and sometimes we have two people who've known each other for a long time talk, because I think both of those things offer a really interesting and unique insight to a lot of people here who the non-musicians are music lovers, but there's a lot of musicians here, right? How many people here are musicians? Yeah, it's almost like a music camp. So you can be the two of you can get as nerdy as you want to get, as detail-oriented as you want to get, but I would like to encourage both of you at any point, if you want to ask questions to each other, feel free, but I'll just kind of kick it off with a couple. The first one is, I want to know, because you all have recorded together, you've played gigs together, and I want to know the first time that each of you heard about the other one, or heard them play for the first time. Who goes first?
I don't know. Hello?
Yeah. Can you hear? Yeah,
there was excuse me? There was a question I wanted to ask you, because I'm not sure if we ever actually talked about this. I moved to Boston in 75. It's sort of feeding back this thing. And the first notes I ever heard you play were on there was a Chet Baker live record.
Jerry Mulligan, yeah.
And I heard this sound, it was like, oh, shit. No, it was like, because it was, I had been listening a lot. I'd studied with Jim Hall, and there were things happening. You were in that zone of taking it where I was thinking I might like to go, and you were already there before I was there. But what I wanted to ask, did we ever talk about, very soon after that, I also heard this album with Terramasa Hino and Ron Carter and Tony Williams, and to hear a guitar in that role with those people, that record, I gotta get that record messed me up really bad.
Oh, Bill, thank you.
But did we ever talk? I must have asked.
No, you mentioned that once before, and that was, but Bill and I both were Berkeley students, but Bill had already gone to like a regular college before Berkeley, and I just went right out of high school, so we missed each other by a month or something, because I moved to New York in January of '75, and I had been in Boston that whole time before that, but and in December was when I recorded with Jerry and Chet of '74. So we were just crossing paths, but I had already heard about Bill. And but that record I made with Terramasa Hino, I got really lucky, because that was like a year later, 2 years later. Hino was so great because he could really play modern hip jazz, and he wanted guitar, man. He heard me playing in New York and hired me. So the first time I played with him was with Ron Carter and Tony Williams, which you've heard of those guys, right? They were the the greatest jazz musicians in the world, and this guy Hino was this older Japanese trumpet player who was already really established in his home country of Japan, and really good at modern jazz. So it was incredible. And Ron Carter gave me a good hint. He said, "Don't play the roots when we play together." And I was like, "Of course." But it's a great lesson, actually. And
did he tell you that before you had started playing or after you had started?
Right after, I think half the record I didn't play roots or something. But he also, he said something else. I think it was on that record tape. It was Hino said, "Oh, let's try that again." And Ron said, "Well, you guys can just overdub over the last one. I played my part right." But he was also, really nice, and Tony Williams was too, and so was Hino, and I was shaking in my boots. And I remember when I first heard Bill Frisell was around that time, because we had crossed, we knew all these people in common.
Yeah.
And I heard the story of these guys that I knew from Boston going to Belgium.
Oh no.
So what year was that?
It was 78.
Okay. And then I was playing with Dave Liebman, and we went to Belgium.
Oh yeah. And that was another record.
With Liebman.
Yeah.
Wow. But you had just left or something. I think it was 79. I went to Belgium, and you weren't there. But I remember hearing some recording you had done with that, and Bill was this legend that I knew about and had heard, and we knew so many of the same people.
I made a record with Chet Baker too back then.
Really? In Belgium?
Yeah.
With
that guy.
With
Not Jacques.
Jacques Pelzer? Wow.
The pharmacist. Sorry.
Is that slang for something?
No, it's literal.
He was literally a pharmacist.
Yeah, but he was also Chet Baker's closest friend and a great alto player.
Oh, wow.
And he was for real, he was beautiful musician, but he also was a pharmacist. So during that time,
he was a, but he played a beautiful sound and was a really nice man. But he was, would go into his pharmacy and get whatever Chet wanted and whatever he wanted, and they lived like that. Don't try it. They didn't live too long. Let me tell you.
But that album was actually with Jacques' nephew, Steve Hubin. I don't know if you know him.
Oh, who was? Yes, I remember that name. Yeah, that was his nephew.
Yeah, alto and
his daughter
alto.
was a drummer.
Yeah, Micheline.
Before I throw stuff out to the audience, I want to ask one more question. If each of you could go back in time and take one thing from the other person's musical toolbox and appropriate it as your own, get the jump on it, what would it be? One thing you could steal from each other, but having it's like you did it first. They didn't do it. You got there first. What would it be?
I guess I'd steal Bill's Telecaster.
That's what I was gonna say.
No, I would love to.
I want your Telecaster.
I would love to have just some Bill Frisell rub off on me, and I think it already has, because ever since I first heard him, it was a learning experience about the guitar and about music, and about more than the guitar, how to make music, and big lesson there, yeah.
I think a lot about that. We're very close to the same age, and we came up. Things were hitting us at the same time, and having your mind blown by the same things at the same time, and then I don't know. I never even when I first heard those first records, I thought, man, I didn't never dreamt that I'd ever get to play with you, you know. No, really, you were like superhero, and then we meet, and you turn out to be this like a human being, you know.
At times. No, Bill, you know, but the funny thing about that is that, you know, we were really just like a year apart in the hierarchy of leaving school in Boston and going to New York. And I got to make a couple of records when Bill was headed there, you know. And then Bill came, and so we're talking about a really close, you know, 2-year period where, you know, and I got to be a guy who got to be on some records. And for me, right before me, or a little bit before that, was John Abercrombie and Philip Catherine.
Yeah.
Because Philip came to Berkeley. Did you know that?
Yeah. He was also, that was one of my big breaks, because when I was living in Belgium, he was playing with Michael Gibbs' band and had recorded with Michael Gibbs. And I had been in school, and I played in Michael's student band, and he had a tour of Great Britain all over England.
Wow.
And Philip couldn't do the tour, and Mike knew I was over there and called me to do that gig. So that was kind of the first. You mentioned Philip, so
yeah.
But that's how I met Kenny Wheeler, and I met Abraham Weber, and all this.
The
Charlie
ECM
Mike,
connection.
Yeah, through Mike, and that was a huge opportunity for me.
Talking about Philip Catherine, a really wonderful guitar player that we both know and knew in the 70s.
Sorry, I lied. There's one more question I want to ask, which is about the way that, so obviously the way that people play music over time changes. It's subject to physical limitations, like the length of a vinyl, right? So or the length of like radio play or something, like artists are affected by environmental factors, right? Whether it's like a physical thing or like a fashion thing, like, okay, now we don't play songs that are over 3 minutes on the radio, so artists start writing fast songs, this kind of stuff. And I don't think jazz is really any different in the fact that playing styles change, so solo styles change. And the two of you both have this, like, you're both known as legendary guitar players, but I think when people think about the two of you, the first thing that they're not thinking about is the guitar. They're thinking about music. So you both have like really beautiful, subtle, patient ways of expressing music that maybe my generation and definitely younger generations, maybe it's like different the way people relate to music. Like if you're not playing something flashy or fast immediately, you know, it's like the trip that people like you take us on is maybe different from the trip that people that we see on Instagram take us on, right? And I'm wondering what your thoughts are. Have you felt over the last, 10 years, like situations in which you feel like the audience isn't getting you, like the attention span is too short? Have you felt the opposite? Have you felt that people almost like need what you're offering more because there is so much instant gratification? I'm just wondering about like how you see your ways of expressing music reacting with the times as they've gone on.
Well, I think that I don't really notice it, you know? I mean, and this is really weird because, of course, I know that TikTok are these little things with guys playing really fast and women playing really fast for 2 seconds. I don't take it seriously because I already know what I like, and not just what I like, what I consider to be great, you know? And because both Bill and I have been around greatness, and that's never going to wear off. Of me, and I don't think of Bill, because we've been lucky enough to be around that, and it might at this point be something that's not as out there in the world, but luckily, you know, both Bill and I can play and do our thing, and I think for me anyway, I aspire to that other thing that I've known about my whole, you know, since I started in my 20s, to wake up to some really what's happening. And then when you play with some people that can, what we say, really play, you know, which doesn't mean just really play your instrument, but means communicate in that way with a band and make something happen. That changes you, you know. So those same values are just part of me, and I can't shake it. You know, if I was asked to join the TikTok world, I wouldn't be able to. You know, I'd blow it. You know, but you guys got it. Go ahead, TikTok out. I don't care.
That's amazing. Bill?
I think I hear what you're saying. No, I feel lucky that I think for both of us that there's, like when we make a recording, it's not, when you make an album, it's a snapshot of this one moment, and the music is constantly evolved. From the next minute it's something else, and so I think this is true for you. You know, when we go do a gig, it's like every gig is a step into the unknown, hopefully. You know, it's not, you don't quite know where you're going, and I feel lucky that there's some kind of an audience that's willing to go along with, rather than expecting it to be a copy of what the last recording was. Recording is such a weird thing, you know, it freezes time, and then you can't, it doesn't feel right to me to just try to recreate that on a gig. So I feel lucky that the audience understands that, and sometimes they don't, but that's kind of a drag. But if they, you know, how come you didn't do it like the record? Well, I forgot, you know. So really, I mean, talking about Ron Carter, like recording, it is weird. It's like I've recorded with Ron Carter a few times, and I did an album with him and Paul Motion, a trio album, which to me was like this is a huge moment in my life, getting these guys together. And you know, they had actually played once in the early 60s or something, but to me it was like this huge thing. And then a few years after that, I was talking to Ron, and Ron says, did we ever record with Paul Motion? You know, and I was like, what? How could you not remember that? But then I'm thinking, you know, it was only a few hours of one day, and he went and did that, and then he went and he played with Hank Jones, and then he went and did this, and then he did that, and it was just a momentary thing.
I think we realize, you know, that it's just like life. You know, we're all here going day to day, talking and sharing ideas with each other and getting through the day. Turns out music's just like that. And you know, each day is different. You don't know what's going to happen. And probably when Bill and I can only speak for myself, but I believe Bill would feel the same way. You know, when we realize that, it takes so much pressure off, because it's just, here we are, you know. And you make that record and you try and make it as good as you can, but you don't try in the pop way of overdubbing a lot. You know, I mean, I've given up on that pretty much, and you know, it's just a snapshot that's hopefully good, and that takes a lot of the pressure off. Then, you know, you can move on to the next record.
Yeah, I feel like we've both been lucky with that too, that we're able to do it again and just keep trying and trying to get it, you know.
So lucky with the record business that both of us were there when these companies would say, "Oh, make another one."
And pay you, right? They pay you
And
to
you
make
get paid.
records, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that now we make records for companies like Spotify and Apple and Tidal, and they don't pay for the record to be made, right? I mean, it's interesting. I know you all know that because most of you are musicians. It's like not only do they pay you less every time someone listens to. I was thinking that when we were playing tonight, Madison said, "Hey, I have my vinyl over there. I'm an independent artist. That's how I pay my rent." And I was thinking, wow, if someone buys one vinyl for her, that's the equivalent of like 20,000 streams. The payout, right? Something like that. Yeah, like $35. I think you'd need tens of thousands of people would need to listen to your music for the equivalent of one vinyl sale at a gig, right? And it's different because back in those days, not only did the label pay you when you sold records, they also paid you to make the record, right? They'd cover your studio, they'd recoup it, but they'd front it. And in today's era, it's like we're really kind of out at sea with no life preserver.
It changed.
It changed.
Yeah. It was the age of steam, you know. And then the diesel things came in and it just changed.
Does anybody have any questions? Oh my God. Yeah, come on up. Fire away.
This is for Bill, but John, if you want to chime in, if you've recorded with classical artists, I wonder how your experience with Renee Fleming was creating that album with her.
Yeah, that was one of those, I must be dreaming or what's going on here. You know, I knew of her as actually I didn't even know, I was in a recording studio leaving. I was walking down the stairs and she was walking up the stairs. So I see this beautiful woman is walking up the stairs and she says, "Oh, are you Bill Frisell?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she just said, "I love your music," you know. And then someone said, "Oh, that was Renee Fleming." And then I was like, "Who's Renee?" And then I started, you know, checking out what she did. And then soon after that, she contacted me and asked me to do that album. And I was like, wow, this is wild. But I didn't know she had that background in, you know, that she used to sing. Who was the, forget, there's a saxophone player that she used to play with, Illinois Cat. And you know, she had a background in singing standard songs and all that, and so she wanted to have some evidence of, you know, document that. And no, that was really beautiful to get to play with her.
Anybody else? Yeah. Maybe for feedback purposes, you might want to come up. Oh, you can? Ask me. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Miles question. What was your experience like playing with Miles?
It was great, you know. I got to play with Miles Davis and was in his band for 3 years. It was a big thrill, and I was a huge Miles Davis fan before I ever joined his band, and then getting to get to know him a little bit, and you know, I played with him a lot. It's incredible. As a jazz fan, that's been the greatest gift, is getting to meet and play with some of my idols and check them out, you know. And with Miles, you know, it was just, man, I was there, you know, with him in the room, and he would tell us all about the great music that he had experienced. And he would talk about Charlie Parker or you know, all the greats, you know, and he was really funny. He was hilarious, man. He was like he was like Richard Pryor or something, you know. He was really, really funny, and it was also a superstar, which was really weird. I've never experienced that before, and maybe right now his star is not quite as high as it was when I was playing with him. You know, he couldn't go on the street. He was like Marlon Brando or something. And people would come to the gigs like Brando and Bob Dylan and Mick Jagger, and he would like, I don't want to see him, you know. And that was incredible. But the main thing was playing with him, you know. So we all know about the star stuff, but when you played music with him, he would put it in this beautiful place. And I'll never forget, because we'd be taking our solos and it would be whatever. And then he would start to play and everything would come together. And that was magic, and that was a lesson.
Anybody else? Yeah, come on up. It's a long trip, but we're here.
Hi, so nice to meet you all. So, as you mentioned, we're standing in the presence of greatness, but I also want to acknowledge that we're standing in the presence of kindness. And so I was hoping that you could speak to the kindness and friendliness that it takes to be successful as a musician, especially working with other musicians.
Love that.
That's so much of it. Like, I mean, you talked about that. It's about so much more than the notes. It's about what we are as a person. You know, that's everything. You know, if I mean, music is it's a model for how we can deal. You know, harmony. Imagine that. What does harmony do? You know, when you listen to each other and you try to make something beautiful. So how can you? It's not like a contest. It's not who's right or wrong. It's about trying to rescue each other. You know, if you're playing and for me, the best moments are, you're always looking for that time, that moment where you jump off and you don't know where you are, and sometimes you jump off and you're like, oh shit, you know. But then if you're playing with guys that are with you, they'll lift you up. I mean, that's another one of those Miles stories. Like Herbie Hancock says, yeah, I played the wrong chord and then Miles played a note that made the chord right. You know, it's not about, oh, you turned the beat around, or you did this, or you played the wrong note. That's not happening. So, anyway, be kind to each other when you're playing.
Yeah, we've all learned, you know, Bill and I and all of us have played with bands, and Michael too, enough so that's been so much of our experience of getting along with other people, is because we've been lucky enough to play a lot since high school, you know, and boy, you learn a lot about how important it is to be kind to each other, and that something happens for the music, you know, when you can allow that to happen. And you know what's interesting is that when you play with people, you'll play with people that are really different from you, and you might not get along with them in the real world, but if you can make good music together, you are bonded forever, because we need each other so much, you know, to make this stuff work. And I've noticed that you know, that different desperate personalities come together and work together, and that's one of the gifts of music, you know. I wish I could make that work in the real world. Luckily, a lot of my real world is playing with other musicians.
There's maybe also a practical element to that, which is that when you're touring, there's 24 hours in a day. If you're lucky, you sleep 5, 6, right? And then you're on stage for maybe 2 of them, so there's still like another 16 hours in the day where you're just kind of hanging out together in hotel lobbies or on planes or in vans or in green rooms. So if you have a prickly person, it can really have a big effect on your life. And if you're around kind people, it can have similarly large effect. Right?
But if the music's happening that night, that prickly person, you're just laughing it off, and they're laughing you off, and it's all
Right.
beautiful.
Right.
Most of the time, I think.
The
I know
last-
those sons of bitches you play with, Bill.
Yeah, it's rough.
One more? Come on up, man. And we'll let these guys get a little bit of rest before their flights. Right here's best so that you don't stand in front of the speakers.
So your discussion of overdubs, just made me think that Bill, you're like one of the few jazz or jazz adjacent artists who really have used that sort of post Sgt. Pepper, technique, studio techniques, like in a creative, compositional way, rather than just like a Band-Aid or something. And I love that the albums you've done in that way, and just maybe see sort of the other side of like the positive side of overdubbing. Maybe talk about that a little bit.
You overdub?
I've been known to.
This conversation is over.
Be kind to me now. You overdub.
I know, I did it too. Did I say
We
I
all
never
did
did
it.
it? We all did it. I just don't want people to know.
No, but that's something. Also, you're making we talked about the music being in this state of constant evolution, but then at the same, you're also trying to make something like in a compositional way, or something. You're making
Oh yeah.
something that
Something
people
lives
are going to
forever.
listen to.
And I think the technology makes it so it's very hard to not correct stuff when it's just a flick of a dial. And I do that too. Luckily, the budgets are such that we can't obsess about it too much, and I don't have Pro Tools at home.
Yeah, I still don't really use the computer and stuff myself, so. But no, there's something to be said about orchestrating something, or that's a whole nother.
Of course.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, it's great to, and Bill's does such great stuff with multi-laying different guitar parts, and I've done that too, and it's a wonderful thing, yeah. I mean, no, what I was trying to say to clear this up is we're involved in this jazz process of playing together and making this thing happen nightly, and that's what we try to do in the studio, is capture a performance as a group. And then, you might fix a little bit here and there, or you might have a project where you want to just orchestrate. But to me, I'm more and more committed to doing this thing with these different musicians where we just play together, and what happens, we'll do a few takes of a tune, but to try to get that thing where we're all playing together and it's happening. It's very hard to describe, but that's it. And that's the jazz thing, and it was also in other kinds of music all over the place before they had the opportunity to overdub. That was the only way you could play. So it wasn't just jazz, it was all music, was just performed. But yeah.
So as a very last closing thought from each of you, both of you mentioned in certain moments this idea of like the moment in which real music is made, right? You were talking about Miles taking you to that place, or playing with artists that like where you really felt like it's real music, it's really deep. And I'm wondering if you would be able to describe what that is. I know it's a hard thing to put into words, but the best you can, and kind of simultaneously, if there's any advice that you could offer the musicians out here to try to get to that place.
That's probably the most difficult question you've asked all night.
I'm sorry.
I don't know how you would describe it, because it's so fleeting. Like if you try to describe it, then you mess it up, right? you know, when it's happening, it's just you're in it. And I mean, that's happened to me so many times when you lose yourself you're with your folks and the music is happening, and then there's a moment, it's happened to me where a moment I'll become aware that, wow, I just did this amazing thing. And then bam, it's gone. I've told this story before, but it totally illustrates what I'm talking about. It was so strong. I was visiting my daughter who was working at this art center in Vermont. Sorry, hope this will take less than a half hour, but I hadn't seen her in a while, and it's out in the country, this beautiful place, and we spent the day together, and then we had dinner, and then there was this ping pong table there, and there's nobody around. Let's just play ping pong. You know, we start hitting the ball back and forth, and let's not keep score. Let's just play, you know. And then we're just kind of hitting the ball. It's getting kind of late, and then I thought, man, let's try to make it to 100 without missing, you know. So we're not keeping score, but we're just gonna try to let's hit it back and forth, you know, bam, bam. So we go, you know, 11, 12, 13, oh shit. And then 1, 2, and then 14, 15, oh God. We kept going, you know, like an hour goes by. Come on, we gotta make it to 100. We just got, so eventually we got into this thing where it's just bam, bam, bam. Yeah, like 100, you know, and but 100, you know, 150, and it's going. We're just going. 600, 601, 602, 603, 604, 605, 600. Which what comes next? 607, 608. And when we got to 608, in my mind, man, I bet we can make it to 1,000. And bam! The moment that thought entered my mind, I messed up. And that's what it's like when you're playing. You know, when you're playing and you're in the thing.
John, can you top that?
No, that's it. You know, yeah, I don't know. You know, I think we're. You know, this idea of improvising. That's what we're students of. What is this? And it's a lot like, you know, just right now when we're talking and certain sentences come out and they're nice, and then sometimes you stop and think about it and you lose it, you know, and that's one thing I like about music, to listen to people play like that, you know. They're conversing, even if there's only one person. I'm conversing right now, you know, and I'm trying to leave some space so that I can think of something else to say, and that's what we do when we play, you know. And I didn't know that for a long time. I thought playing had to be something else, but it turns out that's good. That's the way the stuff that I really like is like that.
Well, it's been incredible to hear both your thoughts, and thank you for sharing them with us. Thanks for the great questions. John Scofield and Bill Frisell. Don't see that every day. Thank you. No, thank you for everything you've given to music. We're all in your debt. Thank you very much.